Two carrots side by side in my hand, one straight as a pencil, grown in a pot. The other twisted around a chunk of hard backyard clay. Two plants on this 20-item list almost did not survive that same standard. The ground was never really the problem for them. I kept them in anyway. Later, I will show you why. The carrot is not luck, it is soil. Most of the other 18 have the same kind of advantage. The ground creates a real problem, and the pot removes it. For every plant, you will get the exact reason it earns its place and the minimum pot size that actually works. Near the end sits the clearest container win on the whole list. Most people would not expect it in a vegetable video at all. Number 1. Potatoes. No shovel, no guesswork, just a tarp. You don't dig for these, you dump them out. You're on your knees in August, forking through clay that hardened back in June. 3 of your 5 potatoes already have fork holes clean through the middle. Most guides never tell you why that happens. It isn't bad luck. Here's what's actually happening underground. Potatoes don't grow from roots. They form along the buried part of the stem, up to about the first 12 inches above the seed potato. Hilling that zone is what matters. Beyond that, more soil just means more work, not more potatoes. In the ground, that means a hoe and a weekly mound. Racing to bury it before daylight turns the tubers green. In a fabric grow bag, hilling is one motion. Pull the sides up, drop in more soil. Done. Here's exactly what to buy and what size. A 15-gallon fabric grow bag, at least 14 inches deep, holds 3 seed potatoes. Yukon Gold is the forgiving pick. It sets most of its crop in one band and doesn't ask for much hilling. Want a bigger haul from that same bag? Gardeners reach for Kennebec instead. It rewards a deeper fill more than Yukon Gold does. 90 to 110 days, depending which one goes in. This is the one I tell every beginner to start with. One thing this bag won't cover well: long fingerling types. They want more room than 15 gallons gives, so size up to 20 if that's your plan. No shovel. No guessing where the roots are, just a tarp and a dump. Number 2. Radishes, proof of life in 5 days. 25 days. That is the whole commitment. If you've never grown anything before, start here. Proof of life in 5 days? Flat. Here's the part that explains the whole thing. A radish swells sideways in the first 2 inches of soil, nothing more. Hit a rock or a hard clump there and the root forks instead of rounding out. Loose soil in a container means you never hand it anything to push against. Go with this, and here's the number that matters. Cherry Belle, the classic round variety. In a 1 to 2 gallon pot, 6 to 8 inches deep. Thin seedlings down to 2 inches apart once they're up, or the roots crowd each other into skinny, twisted shapes. 22 to 28 days to harvest. Zero fuss, start to finish. One thing to watch. Once summer heat climbs past 75 degrees, radishes turn hot and spongy fast. Stick to early spring or early fall. Fastest win on this list. Start here if you doubt yourself. Number 3. Carrots. Straight roots are a soil decision, not a skill. Every forked, stubby carrot you've ever pulled had the same cause. You pull one up shaped more like the letter Y than a pencil and wonder what you did wrong. You didn't. It was the dirt underneath it. Here's the mechanic nobody puts on the seed packet. A carrot grows by pushing straight down through expanding cells. Hit a rock, a clay clump, or packed soil, and it forks around instead of through. Container soil stays loose top to bottom, so your carrot never meets anything worth fighting. If you're picking one, make it this: scarlet knot. Blunt-tipped and forgiving of imperfect soil. Give it 12 inches of depth, thin to 2 or 3 inches apart, 60 to 75 days to pull. I've lined this up against ground-grown carrots more than once. Not close. Sift out rocks first and skip high nitrogen fertilizer. It grows leaves, not roots. If your backyard soil already runs loose and sandy, this whole advantage shrinks. Check what you've got first. Straight carrots aren't a skill, they're a soil decision. Number 4. Lettuce, the chess piece that outruns the heat. Lettuce doesn't need a bed. It needs a chess piece you can move. Your neighbor's lettuce sits in full sun and bolts bitter by June. Your pot, moved to afternoon shade, is still good 3 weeks later. Here's why the ground can't give you this. It isn't just air temperature, it's heat sitting in the soil around the roots. A fixed bed baking in full sun holds that heat all day, but afternoon shade keeps the soil underneath several degrees cooler. In plain English, 3 feet of shade buys you 3 more weeks of salad. I ran this next to a fixed bed for 2 summers. Not close. The variety that actually earns its spot? Black-seeded Simpson, loose leaf and more heat-tolerant than romaine. 1 to 2 gallons, 6 to 8 inches deep, 3 or 4 plants per pot. 45 to 55 days for a full head, sooner for baby leaves. Cut the outer leaves, let the center keep growing. Somewhere that stays cool all summer? This barely matters. Move it into the shade, that's the whole trick. Number 5. Mint, the only thing standing between you and a takeover. Everyone tells you not to plant mint in the ground. Almost nobody tells you why the pot has to be the right kind. If you've already planted mint straight into a garden bed, stop and go check how far it's traveled. It's further than you think. Here's what's actually happening underground. Mint spreads through thick, white segmented stems called rhizomes that travel sideways just under the surface. Leave one fragment behind, and you've got a whole new plant. I used to think a pot alone solved it. I was wrong. A container only blocks that sideways travel if the rhizomes can't sneak out through the drainage holes at the bottom. Here's exactly what to buy and what size. Spearmint or peppermint, the 2 most common types. Both need the same containment. Mint spreads hardest in zone 5 through 8, where freeze-thaw cycles crack the soil open every spring. Get a pot at least 12 inches across, 12 to 14 inches deep, rim sitting an inch above the ground around it. 1 variety per pot. Mixing spearmint and peppermint muddles the flavor of both. Check the drainage holes now and then. See a white root poking through? Snip it before it touches soil. Even in the pot, if mint flowers and sets seed, that seed still travels. Snip the flowers before they open if other beds are close by. The pot isn't overkill. The pot is the only thing standing between you and a mint takeover. But 4 entries from now is a plant most people get wrong the exact same way twice. Once when they plant it, and again when they bring it inside for winter. Number 6. Beets. 1 pot, 2 harvests, same soil fix. Beets and carrots share the same enemy, compacted soil. You dig up a beet that looks half-bitten, lopsided and cracked on one side. Nothing chewed it. It just had to grow around a hard clod that never budged. Here's the part that explains the whole thing. A beet root swells outward as it matures, pushing soil aside in every direction at once. Hit a dense clay pocket anywhere near it, and the root grows lopsided and cracked instead of round. 2 harvests from 1 pot beats almost everything else on this list. Go with this, and here's the number that matters. Detroit Dark Red, the classic reliable pick in a 2-gallon container, 8 to 10 inches deep. Thin seedlings to 3 or 4 inches apart. 50 to 60 days to a full root, though the greens are ready to cut weeks before that. Only trimming for greens? A container shallower than 8 inches still works fine. Same fix as carrots. Loose soil, round root. Number 7. Sweet potatoes, big container, compact vine. Done. These vines will eat your whole yard if you let them. The first time I grew these, I followed the formula exactly, right bag, right slip count. That fall, I pulled up potatoes the size of baby carrots. My mix was thin on organic matter. Not bad luck. Here's what's actually happening underground. Sweet potato tubers are swollen roots branching off buried nodes. Give it loose, warm soil below 8 inches, and it sizes up fast in your bag. Most people blame the variety. It's almost always the container. That's the whole trick, and it costs nothing extra. If you're picking one, make it this: Beauregard or Bush Puerto Rico, both compact vine types bred for pots. 20 to 25 gallons, 15 plus inches deep. 1 slip per 10 gallons of soil. Go bigger, not smaller. 90 to 120 days, depending on your zone's heat. Pinch the vine tips back so energy goes into roots, not more leaves. Short summer, under 90 warm days? Pick an early variety, or skip this one. Big container, compact vine, that's the whole formula. Number 8. Bok choy. Distance is the pesticide you forgot you had. The problem was never bok choy. It was flea beetles. If your kale bed gets shredded with tiny holes by June, don't plant bok choy next to it. Put it in a pot on the other side of the yard instead. Here's why the ground can't give you this. Flea beetles overwinter in the soil right where your brassicas grew and emerge just as seedlings pop up. A container on a deck, away from that old soil, misses their first wave when they emerge in spring. No one talks about this one. The variety that actually earns its spot? Toy choy or win-win choy, both dwarf types for small pots. 1 to 2 gallons, 6 to 8 inches deep, 4 to 6 inches apart. 30 to 45 days to harvest. Planted a few feet from any other brassica bed, kale included. If your yard has 0 other brassicas anywhere, this isolation trick barely matters. Distance is the pesticide you didn't know you had. Number 9. Peppers. Skip the seed, keep the same plant. Your pepper plant doesn't have to die every winter. That's a choice you're making. You look at a pepper plant gone black in the dirt after the first frost in November, knowing you'll be starting from seed again come spring. Here's the mechanic nobody puts on the seed packet. Your pepper plant is technically a perennial back in its native range. A plant that survives its first winter carries an established root system into spring. It skips the slow, early growth entirely. It starts flowering 4 to 6 weeks sooner than a seedling started from scratch, often with a bigger harvest too. I put a first-year seedling next to a second-year overwintered plant once. It wasn't a fair fight. Here's exactly what to buy and what size. Any compact bell or hot pepper works. Jalapeno and cayenne both overwinter well. Overwintering pays off most in zone 3 through 8, where ground peppers die every winter, nothing exotic required. In zone 9 or 10, you can often leave them outside year-round. A 5-gallon container minimum, brought in once nighttime temps drop below 50 degrees. Prune the plant back to about a third of its height before it comes inside. Set it near your brightest window and ease off watering through winter. This only works if you've got a bright window to give it. No space like that. And this one doesn't apply. Same plant, second year, head start already built in. Number 10. Garlic. It dies from wet feet, not the cold. Garlic doesn't die from cold. It dies from wet feet. If your soil turns to soup every time it rains for more than a day, garlic in the ground is a gamble you don't need to take. Here's why the ground can't give you this. Garlic needs steady moisture, but it hates sitting wet. Clay drains slowly enough that winter rain can pool right at bulb depth for weeks, and that is where rot starts. In plain English, a container drains on your schedule. Clay soil drains on its own. Nobody puts this on the seed packet. Go with this, and here's the number that matters. Hardneck varieties like German Extra Hardy handle cold zones best. Softneck suits warmer ones. Plant in fall across most of the country. 2 to 3 gallons for a handful of cloves 8 to 10 inches deep. 8 to 9 months until you're pulling bulbs. Mulch lightly for winter. Drill extra drainage holes beyond standard. If your soil drains fast and sandy, This advantage barely registers. Drainage you control beats drainage you hope for. Number 11. Cucumbers, bred for this exact problem. Bush cucumbers were bred for exactly this problem. Your neighbor grows cucumbers flat on the ground, and by midsummer the bottom leaves are yellow and spotted. Yours, up on a stand, never gets there. Here's the mechanic nobody puts on the seed packet. Fungal disease spreads mostly through soil splashing onto the lowest leaves during rain or watering. Get the whole plant a few feet off the ground, and your leaves mostly stay out of that splash zone. For keeping foliage clean all season, nothing else on this list makes it this easy. If you're picking one, make it this. Bush Champion or Salad Bush, both bred for containers. Any warm zone works. Plant after your last frost. 5-gallon minimum, 12 inches across, 1 or 2 plants per pot. 50 to 60 days to harvest. Even a bush type saves space with a small trellis or cage. This entry's better is more modest. Pick a vining variety by mistake, and the whole advantage disappears. Pick the bush variety. The pot does the rest. Number 12. Swiss chard, the one plant that forgives you. Chard doesn't quit. That's exactly why it's on this list. You forget to water for 3 days straight in the middle of summer. You come back to find the lettuce wilted flat, but the chard is standing there like nothing happened. Here's the part that explains the whole thing. Chard's thick stems hold more moisture than thin-leaved greens like lettuce, which is why it usually shrugs off a missed watering day that would wilt lettuce. That reserve is what carries it through a missed watering day that would wilt something more delicate. Zero drama. The variety that actually earns its spot. Bright lights, colorful stems, and tough as anything. Any zone, warm season or cool. 2 gallons, 8 inches deep, 3 or 4 plants per pot. Start cutting outer leaves around day 30. Cut the outside leaves only, never pull the whole plant, and the center keeps producing. This one isn't flashy or surprising like some entries here. It's the workhorse, and it still earns its spot. The one plant on this list that forgives you. 13. Rosemary. It's not the frost, it's the puddle. Rosemary forgives a missed watering. It does not forgive a week of wet feet. Old-timers always blamed the frost. It was never the frost. If your rosemary has died more than once in the ground, it almost certainly wasn't the cold. Check what your soil does after a heavy rain. Here's what's actually happening underground. Rosemary evolved in rocky, quick-draining Mediterranean hillsides. Put its roots in soil that holds moisture the way clay does, and they suffocate and rot long before cold ever becomes the problem. Most people troubleshoot for frost. The actual killer is sitting right there in the puddle. Go with this, and here's the number that matters. Tuscan blue, upright, and a strong container performer. Hardy outdoors year-round in Zone 8 and up. Bring it in for winter anywhere colder. 2 gallons minimum. Big drainage holes, soil mixed heavy with perlite or sand. Let the soil go bone dry between waterings. Rosemary handles drought far better than it handles wet feet. If your yard drains fast and sandy, the ground works fine. Container advantage mainly matters for heavy clay or loam. It's not the frost, it's the puddle. Number 14. Green onions, the crop you already own. You've already paid for this crop. It's sitting in your kitchen right now. You cut a green onion root from the store on a Tuesday morning. By Saturday morning, you've got 2 inches of green shoot on the windowsill. Here's why the ground can't give you this. Keep about an inch of white stem on the root end, and it regenerates new green growth from the roots already there. It was never dead, just waiting for water. I lined up a store bunch against a windowsill regrow once. The regrow won on cost. Here's exactly what to buy and what size. Any grocery store bunch works, no variety needed. Any zone, grown indoors year-round. 1 shot glass, 1 inch of water, changed every 2 or 3 days. Move it to soil after a few days for longer regrowth. South-facing windowsill. Green growth shows within 3 days. Yield drops after 2 or 3 rounds, so keep feeding in fresh root ends. You already own this crop. You just threw half of it away before. Coming up, the one on this list that most people would never think belongs on a vegetable video at all. Number 15. Zucchini, the bug that overwinters under your plant. The bug that kills most zucchini plants spends the winter waiting in your garden soil. An old gardener I know lost his zucchini in the same bed 3 summers running. He finally moved just 1 plant into fresh mix and left the rest in the ground. That 1 plant was the only one still standing by August. Here's the mechanic nobody puts on the seed packet. Squash vine borer larvae drop into the soil to pupate and overwinter exactly where the plant grew. Plant zucchini in that bed again next year, and you've planted it right on top of next year's infestation. Fresh potting mix removes the one specific source waiting in last year's soil. No pupae are already in there waiting for you. I used to tell people to rotate their bed every year. A container skips that problem entirely. If you're picking one, make it this: a bush-type zucchini like Raven or Black Beauty, never the big vining kind. Any warm zone after your last frost. Vine borer peaks in June and July, 10-gallon minimum, 1 plant per pot. 45 to 55 days to your first fruit. Dump the old soil completely every spring. Don't reuse last year's mix for any of the same squash family. This doesn't erase vine borer risk. Moths can still fly in from elsewhere. It only removes the source waiting in that exact soil from last year. Watch for it, and use row cover if needed. New soil every year isn't tidiness, it's pest control. Number 16. Horseradish. Contain it once or dig for a decade. Horseradish makes mint look polite. If you've heard someone say they still find horseradish coming up 5 years after pulling it out, that's the mistake this entry avoids. Here's why the ground can't give you this. Any root fragment you leave behind, even one the size of a fingertip, can sprout a whole new plant. Roots grow deep and sideways looking for room to spread. A container stops that sideways growth cold. For a plant this aggressive, nothing else here needs the pot more. The variety that actually earns its spot, Bohemian or common, the 2 types you'll find for sale. Hardy to Zone 3, grown almost anywhere in the U.S. At least 18 inches deep, 1 plant to a big, sturdy pot. Harvest after the first fall frost, usually a 1-year crop. Dig up the whole container each year. Keep 1 root piece if you want to continue. This needs real depth and a sturdy pot. A shallow or flimsy container never stops the roots. Contain it once or dig it up for a decade. Number 17. Strawberries. Off the ground, off the slugs menu. Ground-grown strawberries lose a fight with slugs every single year. You bend down to pick a ripe strawberry out of a ground bed, and the bottom half is already eaten by slugs. That almost never happens with the hanging pot on your porch. Here's the part that explains the whole thing. Fruit sitting directly on damp soil stays wet longer after rain or watering. Exactly the moisture window slugs and gray mold both need. Fruit hanging off the side of a raised container dries out fast, usually within an hour or 2. That alone is worth the price of the pot. Here's exactly what to buy and what size. Albion, day neutral. Fruiting all season instead of 1 big flush. Any zone works. 2 gallons per plant minimum, or use a hanging pot or strawberry tower. 8 inches apart if you're growing several plants together. Tim the runners back if you want the mother plant pouring energy into fruit instead baby bees. Containers need more watering than a ground bed once summer heat arrives. Off the ground means off the slugs menu. Next up is the one I'd call the real reason to make this whole list. Stick with me for one more. Number 18. Blueberries. Your yard isn't wrong. It's just not this. This is the one most people assume doesn't belong on a vegetable list at all. It's also the one where the pot solves a problem your yard genuinely cannot. A gardener in the Midwest wrote to me after years of pouring acidifier into the same blueberry bed every spring. Alkaline soil returns to itself faster than sulfur on top can fight. Here's the mechanic nobody puts on the seed packet. Blueberries need soil in a narrow band, roughly 4.5 to 5.2 on the pH scale. Most home soil, including yours, runs neutral to alkaline, sometimes 6.5 and climbing. At that pH, iron and manganese lock up chemically. That's why a bush in your ground soil looks stunted and yellow, even with iron already there. Michigan State University Extension puts it plainly. Get the pH wrong, and nothing else about site selection matters as much. Once your soil sits well above 6 in heavy clay, the sulfur needed to fix it makes in-ground planting impractical. In plain English, your bush isn't starving for iron. It's locked out of iron already there. Go with this, and here's the number that matters. A dwarf variety bred for pots, the bushel and berry line, or any compact high bush labeled container friendly. Hardy zones 4 through 8. Check your plant tag. At least 18 inches across, mixed with peat moss, pine bark, and potting soil for low pH. Test the soil once or twice a year with a simple kit. Add sulfur if the reading climbs above 5.5. Large parts of the western U.S. run naturally alkaline, which rules out ground-grown blueberries there without constant amending. If your yard is already acidic, some northeast and Pacific Northwest pockets qualify. Ground planting works fine. Your yard isn't wrong, it's just not blueberry soil. The pot is. If that's the kind of detail you want on every plant in your yard, not just grow this, but exactly why and exactly what size pot, subscribe and hit the bell. Every video on this channel works the same way. Number 19. Basil, the honest one I almost cut. Here's the one I almost didn't include, and I want to tell you why honestly instead of pretending. If you've got a sunny spot in the actual ground near your kitchen door, basil will do just as well there. The pot is about reach, not results. Here's what's happening. Basil is frost tender, flavor peaking right after cutting. The real benefit here is proximity to your kitchen and mobility ahead of a cold night, not a soil or pest fix. I almost cut this one, and here's exactly why. Genovese is the classic culinary basil for this. Any warm zone works. Planted after your last frost, 1 to 2 gallons, 6 to 8 inches deep. Pinch the tops often for bushier growth. This is the weakest case on the entire list. Worth growing for convenience, just don't expect the structural win the rest of this list delivers. Good reason to grow it in a pot, just not the same reason as everything else here. Number 20. Bush beans, the fallback for zero ground. And here's the second one I almost cut. For the same honest reason. If you've got any patch of ground, bush beans don't need a pot to do well. This entry is for the zero-yard crowd specifically. Here's the part that explains the whole thing. Bush beans fix their own nitrogen through root nodules. They tolerate average dirt better than almost anything else on this list. The ground was never really the problem for your plants. Of everything here, this is the one to skip if you've got any dirt at all. The variety that actually earns its spot? Provider. Fast and beginner-friendly. Any warm zone, planted after your last frost. 3 to 5 gallons for a few plants, 8 inches deep. 50 to 55 days to harvest. There's no clear structural advantage for anyone with ground. This is close to a pure no-yard fallback entry. This isn't a comeback story, it's just a fallback for people with zero ground. And that's a fine reason too. 20 plants. 2 of them made the list mostly because you asked, not because the ground was working against them. The other 18 all had the same thing in common. Your yard had a real physical limit. and a container was the actual fix, not just a nicer-looking one. One more thing before we wrap up. Do not dump healthy potting mix just because the calendar changed. Pull the old roots out, refresh the top few inches, and reuse the rest. Only start completely fresh in a pot that had disease, heavy pests, or stubborn weeds, like the zucchini bag from this list. That's the habit that actually breaks the disease and pest cycle we talked about with the zucchini. And it protects everything else on this list too. So here's what to do next. Tonight, write down 3 things on this list you've already tried straight in the ground and watched fail. Maybe it was crooked carrots. Maybe it was a potato patch that gave you 3 good tubers out of 20. This week, if your planting window is open, move just those 3 into a properly sized pot from this list. If it's not the season yet, label the pots now and get them ready for your local planting date. Your yard was never the problem. It just wasn't built for everything. Some of this list just needed a different box.